2 days easily passed by as fast as lightning. I ended up succumbing to the pressure and still training so hard. Huh? Ryuk mused to himself as he looked at his own hand. Right now it was calloused, a sign of how hard he had been using it, as his face was incredibly pale as if drained of blood. And true to that, Ryuk was currently drained of blood, with all of it present in the cracks below his feet. Around him were the broken parts of the 3 robots. But these robots weren't just any robots. They were around 2 meters in height, possessing cores at their chests and another one at their foreheads. Electricity cackled from their destroyed bodies, and instead of arms, they possessed sharp, gleaming blades covered in red apex energy. These were robots at the peak stage of the Ascension Plane. Congratulations, Host has defeated 3 robots at the peak stage of the Ascension Plane. Rewards? +1 level up, +4,000 EXP. EXP, 5200/5000. Would Host love to level up? The system asked Ryuk, who nodded. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 18. +15 attribute points have been obtained. Level up cards possessed. 1. Does Host wish to use level up cards? The system asked as Ryuk nodded once more. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 19. +15 attribute points obtained. Stats. Strength, 100. Agility, 100. Endurance, 100. Charisma, 11. Intelligence, 40. Mana, 50, -40. Luck, null. Attribute points, 30. How does Host wish to use attribute points? The system asked, as Ryuk stared lengthily at the panel before ordering, Deactivate System Interface. Immediately, the system panel disappeared, becoming a tiny bit of light at Ryuk's corner sight. I have 30 free attribute points, a pretty substantial amount. I don't know what can happen in the battle with Ignatius. But sometimes, a momentary boost in speed or strength can just be the last defining factor in a life-or-death situation. Hunting beasts for 6 years has at least taught me that. For now, I'll keep those attribute points until the battle with Ignatius. The more cards I can play, the better. Ryuk muttered as he rose to his feet, clicked on the holographs, and returned the room to its sparkling original state. That said, I had battled robots at the peak of the Plane of Ascension, and even after close to 40 hours, I still only managed to defeat 3. They are incredibly strong and difficult to defeat alone. Only these robots can give Ignatius any trouble, but would he have also taken close to 2 days to defeat just 3? I highly doubt that is the case. That means he must be even stronger than these robots. This battle will be a close one, Ryuk muttered to himself. His ability to defeat robots at the same stage as Ignatius didn't give him peace of mind that he would be able to defeat Ignatius too. Ignatius was no robot, and he too would undoubtedly be able to accomplish what Ryuk did. In fact, defeating the robots only informed Ryuk how difficult the battle with Ignatius would be. And speaking of secret cards, Isha is still yet to awaken, Ryuk mused as he turned his consciousness to the storage space. Sitting at the corner of the place was no python. It was a gigantic anaconda, oozing with an incredible amount of frost. It was like Isha was undergoing some sort of mini-evolution as its body repeatedly expanded, and its white scales over its body became as hard as metal. Its aura was growing horrifically cold by the second. But still, the snake refused to awake from its slumber as if the transformation still wasn't complete yet. Right now, Ryuk doubted Isha would wake up soon enough. The probability of that was incredibly low. Most unfortunately, Ryuk would have no choice but to fight all alone himself. Isha was no longer a secret card that he could place his hopes on anymore. Grow stronger, Isha. These were Ryuk's last words as he faded away from the pet world, reappearing in the center of the training room. How many hours left? Ryuk suddenly asked, and the reply came. Around 8 hours before the announcement is made. Guess I'll use the remaining hours to heal my injuries and refill my mana. Ryuk muttered, disappearing out of the cultivation room and into the distance. Unknowing to Ryuk, around a dozen skyscrapers away, there were a total of about 5 instructors who sat at the top of the buildings, all of their gazes locked on his disappearing figure as they watched him move into the special cultivation room. "What do you think of him, Goran? Fate or bad luck?" An instructor wearing a casual golden-colored shirt and trousers asked another who stood by his side, donned in a long dark robe with its hood covering half of the man's upper head features. "I can sense one that is already defeated without the fight ever having started. Right now, it seems that Ignatius will no doubt be the winner, but the human himself has not a single aura of admittance of defeat within him." "What can you tell from his aura right now?" Another instructor butted in as they all turned to look at the dark-robed individual. "His aura. It's like that of a wounded hunter before its strong prey. An almost hopeless situation yet filled with such raw conviction and power. The boy won't go down without a fight. This, I can say with surety. Many of the elders will be watching this fight, and most of them are specifically here for Ignatius himself. His talents are out of this world, and they want to personally see that for themselves and nurture him. Today, they'll be assessing his abilities, but the human boy is recommended by the half-fallen one herself, who also will be watching the fight. One thing will happen for sure in their battle, and that is one of them will become nothing but a stepping stone for the other. If the human boy loses, he loses face for the half-fallen one who recommended him here. I'm pretty sure he will receive nothing but mockery from the elders, and his fate would be unknown. Even if the half-fallen one chooses not to do anything for being let down, some of the fallen elders would bring an end to the boy himself for daring to shame her. In short, if the boy dares lose, he surely dies. The verdict of the golden shirt instructor rang out, one that ought to be fear-inducing, but all of the instructors kept their cool faces. It was as if they couldn't give any more of a damn about it. But of course, why would they? Ryuk was still nothing but a human boy at the end of it all, an outsider allowed to play in the fields of their geniuses. The only value to him was the fact that he was recommended by the half-fallen one herself. If not for that, he wouldn't even be worth the attention at all. For that reason, whether he lives or dies doesn't matter. Thousands of people die per day, and right now, as they all sat down on the skyscraper, there were some parts of the world where people were being blown to bits. If a single human boy dies, what difference does it make? But what of the worst-case scenario? An instructor with dark hair and dark eyes, and with spectacles on his face, suddenly asked. He was the instructor that Ryuk would have immediately recognized as Sir Kieran, their class instructor. "Oh, worst-case scenario. You mean Ignatius losing the fight to the human?" The golden shirt man asked as he chuckled lightly before his eyes became steely cold. "If Ignatius loses, he loses not just a spot to the academy. He loses a spot to the heart of all the Fallens in existence. A budding genius of the lost Ignatius family daring to lose to a puny human a full stage of cultivation below him. Such a thing has never happened before in the history of the Fallens. He would disappoint all of the elders who have specifically chosen to appear here just for him, and that disappointment wouldn't be easily erased. He would have disappointed his own family, and he would immediately be disowned or even chased away by them. No one values strength and honor more than the Ignatius family themselves. Their pride would never allow them to accept him again. Right now, Ignatius is a budding talent, one whose ascension to the highest heaven in a single step is close to guaranteed. But if he dares to fail, he plummets straight to hell and becomes an outcast. A cruel fate, is it not? Sir Kieran asked as he closed the book he was reading and stepped forward toward the edge of the skyscraper. If the human loses, he essentially loses his life for daring to lose face for the devilish half-fallen one. His loss will be atoned for by death. If Ignatius loses, he loses the recognition of the Fallens and becomes an outcast. For a genius at such a young age, with budding arrogance and pride, that will no doubt kill his genius heart. In the end, it would be as if he had died too. Though not literal like the human boy, his chances of ever becoming someone respected in the future plummet to zero. A cruel fate, is it not? Sir Kieran ended as the instructors remained silent. But the golden shirt man only found it more interesting, judging from his wide smirk. So it is safe to say, this is no longer just a simple battle to determine who will earn the spot to the Ascension Academy. This is a life and death battle that will determine their fates. The golden shirt man called out aloud with his usual smirk of evil. A fight holding anything but mercy. It will be a true fallen battle. Interesting. Oh, how interesting. Announcement. All geniuses in the Arisen Hall are to head to the Battle Coliseum of the Arisen Hall in the next 3 hours. Failure will be harshly punished. The loud announcement rang out through the entire base, ensuring none of the geniuses present would ever miss it. When Ryuk stepped out of the room, he found a figure in bandages standing right before him, with a small smile on his face. Quinn, Ryuk said in surprise as he looked at the bandaged figure, who scratched the back of his head helplessly. Hey, Ryuk, I didn't ask you. He was saying but stopped when he felt Ryuk wrap his bandaged arm around his neck and help him. All of the geniuses are to come to the Arisen Hall, meaning every genius still in the area, right? Then let's hurry, Ryuk called out as Quinn smiled, and both boys helped themselves to the venue. The Battle Coliseum Hall wasn't just any type of hall. It was an actual coliseum that looked like a football field, with a wide-open battle arena at the center, forged of hard, dark gem-like flooring that seemed sturdier than any glass in the world. There were various seats around the area, but at the highest place of the arena were special sturdy seats seemingly encased in glass. And right now, the various geniuses could see new faces. There were all old faces or adult faces, and as Ryuk and Quinn helped themselves to the genius seats, Quinn began explaining everything to Ryuk. Those in that seat are the fallen clan elders. They are all a total of 12, representing the 12 lost families. Right now, those 12 people are one of the foremost top powers of the Fallens. In fact, alone, they can bring absolute ruin to some of the remaining 10 families in this region. Their power alone is enough for that. And it seems they've all come to watch this battle. This means they must be taking this battle more seriously than anything, as the elders gathering together like this for an event hasn't happened in close to a decade now. Quinn whispered as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed deep in thought. Also, I have been able to figure out some things, Ryuk, Quinn said, as Ryuk took his attention away from the elders and turned to look at him. And what is that? The top 3 ultimate geniuses. I finally learned about them yesterday while in the hospital. The number 3 most powerful of them is Calidor Whale, the second most powerful is Morgaine Dominaire, and the first and most powerful genius is Ignatius Blade. I figured that out too, Ryuk whispered back, but Quinn soon shook his head. There is more, Ryuk. I have heard that the majority of the elders gathered together didn't come to just watch the battles between the geniuses. They all came for a single person, and that is none other than Ignatius Blade. There have been rumors of him being a powerful genius with an incredible amount of potential, and that rumor has drawn the attention of the elders, hence why they're gathered here today. Not only that, but you have also managed to draw their attention. Ha! All of the elders have become aware that there is a human who was recommended by the half-fallen one herself, the most respected fallen in this area of the Eclipsed Citadel. I don't know if it's fate or not, but somehow you ended up being matched with Ignatius Blade in the test. You, the human, who caught the attention of the most powerful fallen in this area, and therefore the attention of the elders, get matched with Ignatius Blade, the rare genius with potential said to be jaw-dropping. Both of you are the only people who managed to catch the attention of the elders beforehand, and now both of you are facing off against each other. I don't know about you, but somehow, I feel like that random card choosing isn't random at all. This might very well have been planned by someone, Quinn said in a whisper, as Ryuk's eyes narrowed dangerously. But not only that, Ryuk. Look around, Quinn suddenly said as Ryuk turned his gaze around. All of the geniuses are already here, all of the instructors, all of the elders. Everyone is already here, but still they haven't started the event. Doesn't that seem odd? It's almost like all of us are still waiting for someone. Ryuk whimpered. Can you guess? Quinn said with furrowed eyes as Ryuk's brain buzzed at full speed, and his eyes widened when he realized. Don't tell me. Yes, Ryuk. We are all waiting for the arrival of the half-fallen one herself. She will be showing up. And just so you know, she won't be showing up for Ignatius. He might be a budding genius, but we Fallens don't lack phenomenal geniuses all year round. That means the half-fallen one is coming here to watch the event, especially for you. She was the one who recommended you here, a human among the fallen geniuses, so of course, she will show up here at the final event. But while this sounds like something you should be proud of, in a million years, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now, Ryuk, because death is just over the horizon for you. Quinn said as Ryuk frowned. What do you mean? Our fallen family excels at one thing more than the other families, our pride. Your battle with Ignatius Blade isn't a simple battle. If Ignatius loses to you, I can bet my pathetic life that his so-called potential will be thrown out by the fallen family. And no matter how much power he shows in the fights, it would all be thrown out. While the fallen elders might not care about you defeating some nameless fallens, if their number one genius that they have come here to watch gets defeated by a human, then Ignatius will lose his genius status, and the news will spread pretty quickly. That will be the end of his genius life. Naturally, Ryuk, you must understand that not all of the elders will accept her putting you here or your existence. But if you win the match with Ignatius, it will prove to the elders that the half-fallen one knows well what she is doing, and always makes the right decision, just like always. She will gain face, and her ability as a leader will be even more respected by the elders and praised even more. But if you lose, Ryuk, your death is a sure thing. The half-fallen one herself comes all the way down from her tower just to come watch this event solely because of you, and you did nothing but lose? You essentially lose her face, her trust, and her belief in you. Even if the half-fallen doesn't care much, a human that disappointed the half-fallen one will never be left off the hook. You will most likely be killed by the fallen elders, in the name of preserving the face of the half-fallen one. They would never allow a puny human to disappoint one of their most respected and walk away alive with it. You might think of it as a stupid notion, but to our fallen pride, it absolutely makes sense, and I'm sure every genius here already understands that. That is why none of them are currently smiling at all. In short, this is no longer a battle for a spot in the Academy of Ascension. Ryuk. When Ignatius gets on that stage, he would do everything in his power to dominate you, brutally, and show off his skills. Make the win on you as easy-looking as possible. This means he would most likely be going all out from the start and defeating you in the shortest amount of time possible. If he wins, he ascends to the heavens in a single step. His growth and tutelage from all of the elders would be unstoppable. But if he loses? Quinn said, pausing as Ryuk's lips slowly finished the sentence. He loses everything. If you get on that stage, Ryuk, and you lose, you won't just lose and go back to your family's house. You will be killed to appease the fallen pride. The fight between you and Ignatius Blade. It is a live-and-death battle. Only one of you will win, and the one who does ascend to the heavens in a single step. The one who loses plummets to the bottom of hell. Quinn's words rang out continuously in Ryuk's head as his brain began quickly piecing together all the bits of information. He's right, host. The system's notification suddenly flashed before his gaze as Ryuk's beating heart almost stopped. Suddenly, everyone snapped their heads up to the sky, as an incredible amount of golden lights cascaded down, falling steadily like rain, vividly blinding to the eyes. In the next instant, a loud roar boomed through the entire Colosseum. Bow down, everyone, and welcome the half-fallen herself. Bong, 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 barong. What followed was the sound of every knee slamming into the ground. The elders, students, and instructors. Everyone kneeled on a knee, their heads bowed in reverence and their hands over their chest. Not a single one dared to raise their head until the voice rang out. You may all rise. Only after the order did anyone present in the fallen Colosseum finally raise their heads, and Ryuk was no exception. The first thing he noticed was the gigantic golden wing that seemed to cover the entire sky of the arena. When Ryuk had last seen the half-fallen one, her wings were around 2 meters in pure length, but now they had grown to almost 3 times that size. As she descended, they slowly reduced in length until they returned to their former 2 meters. So they can all fold their wing length, huh? He mused, surprised, as he watched the fallen one float to another glass cubicle where the 12 fallen elders had already prepared a seat right in front of theirs. Surprisingly, even among such old and mature individuals, Ryuk noticed that every one of them, male and female, held nothing but reverence in their eyes. They repeatedly bowed their heads with smiles as the half-fallen one waved at them all. He observed how they all remained standing until the half-fallen one sat down on the front seat. Only then did all of them follow her motion, also taking their seats behind her. With the entrance of the fallen one, there is no better day and no better time than to start the final phase of the test. Sir Wan, the golden-haired fallen who had directed the preliminary test, called out from the top of the instructor's podium. His voice rang out gently yet incredibly crystal clear to everyone in the Colosseum. Introducing the contestants and their arrangements for battle, he said, as the Colosseum seemed to close up at its surface, causing a bit of darkness to appear in the hall. However, for all the people sitting, they were all powerful enough to see clearly with no problem at all. The first pair of contestants, Thaddeus Thunderclap of the Lost Family of Thunderclap Requiem and his opponent Joki Logi, one of the 20 most powerful geniuses ever recorded through the phases of this test. Immediately, as the names were called out, a pillar of light fell on 2 individuals sitting in the genius seats area, making them the focus of attention in the entire arena. The most eye-catching individual was one with short dark hair that gently bounced around his head in the advance of the wind. Upon closer observation, one would notice the dark lightning zipping around every strand of his hair. His eyes were a dark shade, holding an illusion of crackling lightning in their depths. The young man rose to his feet, bowing his head in respect to the elders' area of the Colosseum. The second individual was a weary-looking boy with short golden hair and eyes resembling those of Quinn. He seemed to be a head shorter than Thaddeus, with a silver hue in his hair and a smile on his face. He also bowed to the elders. Without needing much observation, one could easily sense how the boy radiated nervousness, which he barely kept together by locking his fingers tightly. He is Joki, the 16th ranked genius on the genius ranking. I heard he is very powerful, but I'm afraid against his opponent, who is an Ultima 10 and one of the strongest 10. His chances of winning this fight are very low. Quinn whispered to Ryuk, who had his eyebrows furrowed at Thaddeus. From Quinn's information in the past, Ryuk had heard Thaddeus was the 8th on the Ultima ranking. Ryuk was undoubtedly interested in his power and wondered if perhaps he could use this match to gauge the power levels of the Ultima geniuses. Were they as monstrous as he had heard, or were the other geniuses simply too weak at heart? Please, both of you, come on stage, the golden-haired man said. Yet before he could completely finish his words, Thaddeus was already on the battle stage. It was as if he had simply zapped himself onto the stage, dark lightning barely trailing on the ground where he had walked. Joki, meanwhile, slowly walked and brought himself to the stage. The rules are simple. Everything is allowed in the test: skills and abilities, arts, runic cards, weapons. Absolutely everything. You lose if you're knocked unconscious by your opponent, or you verbally surrender by proclaiming out loud to the entire Colosseum. So, if you feel you can no longer go on with the battle, you are free to surrender, the man repeated. It was a rule that seemed to favor the students, but Ryuk didn't think so. None of the geniuses would dare to surrender. There were elders from the 12 lost families watching this fight, dozens of instructors, and most importantly, the half-fallen one herself. Surrendering would be admitting to their weakness. How could the prideful geniuses ever do that unless they saw their own lives flash before their eyes, or their sense of helplessness completely overwhelmed them? In the elder booth of the Colosseum, Thaddeus Thunderclap? Isn't he the younger brother of the Thunderclap Requiem anomaly genius, Venom Thunderclap? A silver-haired elder recalled amusingly as the rest of the elders turned their attention to an old man sitting in the middle. He had long dark hair that covered his left eye, but if one stared into his visible eye, the illusion of lightning roaring in their heads would force them to quickly avert their gazes. Ah, that is very true. Thaddeus truly is the younger brother of Venom. But to compare them is to compare the heavens to the earth. Their potential is vastly far apart, the old man said with a chuckle as all the elders also chuckled along. Still, the little boy himself is not that bad at all. His fallen lightning essence is of above-average quality. At least for a genius at this level, he should be able to earn quite a name for himself. An elder complimented. The old man, Hori, nodded his head. Well, I guess we'll all be a judge of that soon. And all attention settled in anticipation at the two young men who stood in the arena, calmly facing the other. Begin! When the order to begin was given, what followed after was not a loud explosion or an instantaneous exchange of skills but calmness instead. The entire Colosseum descended into a deep state of silence, as if the entire world was fading away. To the two who stood at the center of the arena, it was like the entire world had disappeared, and the only things that remained were the both of them as they eyed up each other. Thaddeus's gaze held that of an abyssal confidence, accompanied by a small, amusing smirk. His opponent might be a top 20 ranked genius, but Thaddeus knew well that he was far from being a worthy opponent. His stage was for him to dominate his adversary and make a name for himself. I'm not his match. The thought echoed through the mind of Joki as he looked at Thaddeus, who was crackling with powerful dark lightning all over his sleeves. A weird air wave slowly descended onto the battle stage, enough to his shirt and hair flying around him. Whatever happens, Joki, I hope you understand. You have no one to blame but your own weakness. Thaddeus's voice rang out in Joki's ears, incredibly curt and clear. Joki stared at him for a while before sighing out loud. I understand. I won't chase revenge. But still, that won't stop me from giving it my all, Joki said. In the next instant, he took a single step forward. Immediately, as he did, the eyes of the crowd narrowed as they watched. Radiant Mirage, Joki called out, and a figure suddenly appeared behind him. It was none other than Joki himself, with no visible difference at all. It was almost like Joki had split himself into two. But that was only the beginning. As Joki took a second step forward, another clone of him appeared. Step, step, step. Slowly, Joki began speeding forward, with clones continuously appearing, following his movements. In just 3 seconds, there were now a total of 11 figures in the arena, 10 Jokis and 1 Thaddeus. 10 of the figures were securely sprinting toward the other, the crowd's heart beating in anticipation. A really interesting skill. Even I can't sense the difference at all, Thaddeus thought with an amused smirk as lightning slowly began spilling out of his body. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The sound of lightning was incredibly deafening as Thaddeus floated into the air, rising about 5 meters while flashing a mocking smile. So what if you can clone yourself? I'll just eradicate them all. Suddenly, the light around the area seemed to get absorbed by the lightning surrounding Thaddeus as the entire arena darkened, becoming a world of pitch black. Black lightning snaked around Thaddeus's body, the air itself trembling under the weight of his power. With a sharp clench of his hand, dozens of condensed dark lightning bolts erupted from his fists. Thaddeus jerked his hands back and then punched forward. Instantly, dozens of condensed dark lightning streaks surged forward through the arena with terrifying speed, seemingly appearing before every one of Joki's clones before they could blink. How fast? Beal. 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 Each bolt struck like a thunderous hammer, blasting through the images of Joki's clones and obliterating them to nothing. The residual power was still enough to carve massive craters onto the ground. The surrounding area was instantly lit with bursts of purple and black energy. The sheer force sent shockwaves rippling outward toward the gathered geniuses, but an invisible barrier appeared, absorbing the power of the attacks and blocking it from reaching the contestants. Immediately, Thaddeus's arms became a blur as he began punching forward with horrifying speed, sending crackling thunderbolts through every arc of the arena. Joki's clones got to work, flashing around the area in storms of golden light as they hurriedly avoided the attacks. Yet, one by one, each clone fell prey to the onslaught, and soon, only 3 clones were left as Thaddeus finally paused his attack. Ah! 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 The sound of labored breathing could be heard ringing through the arena. A total of 3 Joki clones stood 10 meters away from Thaddeus, crouched onto the ground and breathing heavily. It took an incredible amount of mana just for Joki to keep his clones alive, and when destroyed abruptly, it consumed even more mana. Right now, 7 of his clones had fallen prey to Thaddeus's barrage, leaving him with only 3 left. Has he finally run out of power? Joki wondered as he watched Thaddeus slowly float down to the ground. But the next instant Thaddeus' foot touched the ground. Void flash. He instantly faded away into thin air as his image slowly disappeared with the wind. He's gone. Boom. Joki's face changed when he looked to the side and found Thaddeus right before one of his clones, whose feet were currently dangling in the air. In the next moment, a loud noise was made as the head of Joki's clone exploded into bits, black lightning bursting out from its destroyed head. The clone slowly faded away into nothing but golden light energy. Instantly, Joki shot backward, retreating further away. But before he could take his 3rd step, a figure appeared before him, dark eyes crackling with lightning as they locked onto his own golden eyes. "You didn't think I'm only a long-range fighter, did you?" Thaddeus asked, his hand crackling with dark lightning. It instantly formed the image of a sharp blade around his fist which tore through the neck of the retreating Joki. Once more it dissipated into golden energy once more. Slowly, Thaddeus took his hands back and turned his neck behind him with an amused expression. "Found you," he said, and in the next instant he whispered, "Void flash. What the hell?" Joki wondered aloud as his eyes barely caught the image of Thaddeus flashing toward him with horrifying speed. His brain worked at full speed when he felt the magnified punch, completely covered in lightning energy. Guess this is the end of the battle. Prismatic barrier. Boom! Immediately, Thaddeus' arm, blaring with arcs of black lightning, smashed straight into Joki's face before the young man was able to react to the blitzing speed. However, at the last second, a barrier of golden light appeared directly in front of Joki's face, blocking Thaddeus' attack. The explosion of energy was enough to send both opponents flying back. But in the next instant, Joki actually sprang forth with horrific speed, as a golden blade suddenly appeared in his hand out of nowhere. "Here is my chance," he roared in his head, as the golden light burst out of the blade, destructive golden light energy cracking the air apart. Joki took one last step forward, the entire ground seeming to get pushed down by the weight of power, and his arms bulged to twice their size. Aurora Sword Slash. Die-I-The-E. A beastly roar surged out of his clenched teeth as the golden sword flashed out with horrifying speed towards Thaddeus, who could barely even react. The attack was just too sudden and had taken him by complete surprise. In the next instant, all Thaddeus could see was a searing beam of golden energy flashing forth toward him with deadly intent. The air in the path of the sword beam was instantly cleaved apart as if it were nothing but paper. The beam seemed to appear instantly before Thaddeus, whose face revealed shock. But then, a sickening smile appeared on Thaddeus' face, and his lips moved. Joki's relaxed heart instantly tensed up. "Aegis of Storm," Thaddeus said at the last second. A dark vortex of black lightning, more of a swirling storm, opened up before Thaddeus and the sword cleave disappeared into it. The vortex of dark lightning suddenly began rotating with speed, and in the next instant, "Aegis Bolt Judgment." Those words were the last thing Joki heard as a pillar of close to 1 meter in pure diameter suddenly burst out of the vortex before Thaddeus. If one noticed, the pillar of dark lightning occasionally flashed with remnants of golden energy and intensity. Boom! The attack slammed into Joki, completely covering up his image as a powerful wave of destruction rippled into the air. The barriers surrounding the arena flared with light to block the residual shockwaves. The explosion died down a few seconds later, and the scene sent gasps from the spectators. Lying flat on the ground with dark steam emanating from him and absolutely charred like a piece of wood was none other than Joki, who remained motionless on the ground. Still standing was none other than Thaddeus, who slowly lowered his hands. His calm gaze looked at the motionless Joki. If one could see closely, they would notice a bit of sweat pouring down Thaddeus himself, but it didn't prevent the smile on his face. "You managed to take me by surprise, Joki. That's a good one. Winner. Thaddeus Thunderclap." The announcement rang throughout the area as bursts of clapping erupted, coming from none other than the geniuses and a little from the elder's booth. Thaddeus calmly bowed toward the elder's booth, then gracefully stepped down from the battle stage. He walked toward his seat as the clapping subsided and the unconscious body of Joki was taken away by an instructor for care. In the elder's booth of the Colosseum. "Ha ha ha ha. Genius. I have to say, that really took me by surprise. Normally, a cultivator at the plane of ascension will only have two abilities, one awakened at the plane of origin and another awakened at the entrance to the plane of ascension. I had thought with Thaddeus having cultivated his abilities of Thunderclap Surge and Cold Flash, he had nothing left to defeat the sudden burst of power from his opponent. But who would have guessed he would have practiced the ancient technique of Thunderclap Requiem? Genius! A chubby elder called out with loud laughter as Elder Hori, the elder representing the Thunderclap Requiem family, held a proud smile on his face. The Aegis of Storm and Aegis Bolt Judgment are two of the most powerful abilities of the Thunderclap secret techniques. In this situation, Thaddeus was able to use them absolutely well. With the Aegis of Storm, he absorbed his opponent's peak attack, and with Aegis Bolt Judgment, borrowed the energy of the attack to further augment the resulting lightning bolt. A smooth absorption of power and immediate discharge of it at the most heated point of battle. Once more, the Thunderclap family's secret techniques ability to change a battle situation in a blink is well shown. A fine genius, I would say. The half-fallen one complimented as Elder Hori's eyes flashed in shock from the compliment before he bowed his head. "You flatter us too much, half-one. What is our ability compared to the Dominaire power? Besides, if not for him being lucky enough to be born into a powerful family and learning a secret family art, he would most likely have lost to the fine young genius finishing attack," he said with a shy laugh as the half-one gave a smile before replying. "Family and its arts are still part of a person's power. To be born into a powerful family is strength in and of itself. It can't be looked down upon, and luck itself is a power of its own." The half-fallen responded before suddenly saying, "And speaking of Dominaire, congratulations, Thaddeus. You have guaranteed yourself a spot. And without further ado, let's move on to the next contestants. Calidor Whale of the Lost Family of Wailing Banshee, also the second-ranked most powerful genius ever recorded since the beginning of the Fallen Arisen training, and her opponent Morgaine Dominaire, the third-ranked most powerful genius since the beginning of the Fallen Arisen Hall training, and also from the Lost Family of Dominaire. The announcer called out, and every genius unknowingly heaved, even the elder's booth quieting down. Immediately, pillars of light emanated forth, shining on two females who slowly rose to their feet. One of the females was someone Ryuk already knew and had communicated with a couple of times. It was none other than Morgaine herself, her expression absolutely indifferent. She didn't give any bow to the elder's area and didn't even look there, immediately stepping forth toward the battle stage. The other genius was a meek-looking young girl with very long silvery hair and a small smile. She bowed coquettishly to the elder's booth before also making her way to the arena. The second-ranked most powerful genius, Calidor Whale, versus the third-ranked most powerful genius. Now this will be interesting. The thought was the same thing echoing through the minds of everyone present in the hall. When the battle between Thaddeus and Joki was about to begin, what was present in the air was expectancy and curiosity. The results were almost already set in stone, yet there was expectancy, a hope that the battle situation might turn around, and just maybe Joki would be able to give a miracle. One could effectively say the energy in the air was a positive one. But not now. Right now, As Morgaine and Calidor stood on the arena, there was no positive energy at all. What was left were hearts spiraling out of control, and most of the students on the edge of their seats. The most powerful females and the most powerful geniuses both rhymed together in the same arena. There was fear towards the destruction that would be caused to both and expectancy for what the end result would be. But still, the geniuses, due to their ignorance, were still positive and prepared for a good show. The same, however, could not be said at all for the elders' booth, which was unusually silent. Fingers tapped on the seats nervously, coming from none other than the elders, and their occasional gazes flashed toward the half-fallen one before diverting. There were no talks, no breaths too loud, and a sickening, heart-chilling silence. "Are you all scared for my daughter, and afraid of what her loss could bring? Or afraid of what the rivaling energy between the Dominaire family and the Wailing Banshee family can bring?" The half-fallen one herself was the one to break the silence as she turned the side of her gaze toward the elders, who all gave nervous laughs while scratching the back of their heads. In the room, there was an elder who wasn't laughing at the half-fallen one, though. A female elder with an otherworldly beauty and long dark hair that covered the left side of her face, revealing her right eye, which was brimming with a dark light. She was covered in long robes that oozed an intense aura of darkness. This was none other than the elder representing the lost family of the Wailing Banshee. All of it, you could say, half-fallen one. The elder of the Whale family responded. Surprisingly enough, even though the rivaling energy between the Dominas and the Wailing Banshees increases every year with every birth of every genius, I would say I, one of the Dominas, have the firmest of bonds with the Wailing Banshees. "Isn't that right, Lilith, my friend?" the half-fallen one said as she turned to look at the fallen elder representing the Wailing Banshee family. All of the elders couldn't help but turn their furrowed eyebrows toward Lilith and the half-fallen one and swallow. In fact, they knew well that both of the women were rivals, that had been at the neck of dominating one another for years now, and the half-fallen one had been winning since they were little. "That is true, Astralinia," the lady replied, and the elders couldn't help but furrow their eyes. The lady had dared to call the half-fallen one by her real name. It was something that had been stopped from fear and reverence once her lost one had ascended the throne of power. But looking at the half-fallen one, she wasn't at all offended, nor was she even surprised that the lady had addressed her by her name. Unknown to most, the bond between Aster herself and Lilith was thicker than that of water, even though the face of that bond was rivalry in the eyes of every other fallen. But you are the only exception to this rule. Only you, out of the thousands of Dominas in existence, are welcomed into the grounds of the lost Wailing Banshee family. Anyone else will still be seen as a rival, or even enemy, never at all a friend. "Not even if the person is a daughter of yours," Lilith said as the half-fallen one chuckled. "As crude as ever. But you all have nothing to worry about. We all have grown old enough to realize nothing in this world is set in stone, especially when it comes to strength and power. We have more in hand than to worry about the destruction that may be caused between two genius families competing. Most likely, this wouldn't be the last nor even the 1,000th battle between them if everything is to go well in the future. So forget the consequences, and let's all just sit back and enjoy, shall we?" the half-fallen one said, as the pressure in the room subsided by an incredible amount, and only now could all of the elders sit back and relax to watch the battle that was slowly being unfurled below. "Morgaine Dominaire, it is an honor to face one from an enemy family in the test. Hee hee." A laugh, which ought to be evil, rang out from the lips of the coquettish-looking Calidor, sounding coquettish and friendly, completely opposite to what emotion should have accompanied it. But Morgaine only responded by cracking her back and twisting her neck. "Cut the bullshit, Calidor. You know well this is a war, and only one of us will come out alive." Morgaine's deep voice rippled through the battle stage, as Calidor's coquettish expression slowly faded away, and a weird dark aura suddenly descended onto her. "Seems like you're not the one to be fooled easily. Then might as well get right to business. Prepare yourself, Morgaine. I swear by all the fallen ones, I will make sure you beg for mercy on your knees as you drown in the screams and roars of your fears. I will feast on your..." Yeah, whatever. Can we begin already? Morgane's uninterested voice rang out, turning to look at the instructor with a raised eyebrow, as Calidor had her words paused, and a vein popped on her head. I swear, this bastard. I will make sure you die on this stage, you arrogant bitch. The hate for the Dominas runs deep within every wailing banshee's blood, and Calidor was no exception at all. Beg. Boom. The word had yet to be finished when Morgane smashed her right foot into the ground and, like an artillery shell, exploded forth like a bomb, the air shrieking in pain. Golden energy burst out from Morgane's fist as she covered 10 meters in an instant. Her leg slammed onto the ground once more, performing another takeoff, covering the entire 30 meters distance between her and Calidor in less than 3 seconds. Boom! An even louder shockwave exploded as Morgane unleashed her punch, and it was as if the world was coming to an end. The golden fist rumbled forth like the punch of a titan, blasting towards Calidor's head with no mercy at all. What followed after was an incredibly powerful scream that caused the entire barrier around the arena to instantly light up incredibly brightly, blocking the students from the shockwaves. However, Ryuk's eyes narrowed sharply as he looked at the space before Calidor, noticing it was currently rippling like a stacking effect, swarming against Morgane's fist and pausing it. Go away! A roar blasted out from Morgane's lips as golden energy puffed from her knuckles. In the next instant, boom! Another incredibly powerful explosion rang out as Morgane slammed her second fist onto the rippling space in front of her, cracks suddenly appearing over all of the space and shattering it apart. Calidor's scream instantly stopped, blood leaking out from her mouth accompanied by a shocked gaze. D. Morgane roared as she punched forward towards Calidor's chest. The air wave in the path of her fist rippled continuously as if space was being carried in her fist, and her hand became a flaming hand of dense energy inching towards Calidor. Wailing banshee step. Calidor suddenly crouched on all fours like a cat, her dark hair elongating, barely dodging the punch aimed at her face, waving above her head. Immediately, bang! Creak! The entire floor beneath them shook as Morgane instantly rose up on her feet and slammed her leg towards Calidor's head. This kick was so fast and heavy it appeared before the side of the crouching Calidor's head with speed. As she hurriedly raised her hand to shield her head, the attack landed. Creak! The sound of bones breaking apart resonated through the arena as Calidor was sent erratically flying into the distance. Taking back her feet to the ground, Morgane once again dashed rapidly towards the flying Calidor, who caught onto the ground with both her feet, carving gorges as she tried to stop her motion with her hands dragging on the ground, only to hear the sound of Morgane already running forth with another punch ready by her side. You dare? Wail of the damned! A chilling scream, accompanied by anger, boomed out of Calidor's lips as her body oozed out a dark gas that rapidly trickled down to the ground and moved towards Morgane's feet. In the next instant, the entire ground of the arena for a radius of 20 meters became covered in dark, inky waters. Spectral hands rose from the ground, clawing at Morgane's legs and stopping her from soaring forth with speed. 2 claws latched onto Morgane's hands, drawing them back, and a claw slashed at her knee, causing her to fall onto one knee. Instantly, the sky above her became covered in the same inky waters, and 2 gigantic arms, brimming with powerful muscles, slammed down with open palms above Morgane's head. Their power was so intense that space rippled downwards towards Morgane's head, and the crowd held their breath in shock. If those hands were to slam into someone, the majority of their body would most likely be reduced to nothing but pulp. Go away! Morgane roared loudly as golden energy burst out from her figure. In an instant, she yanked her hands free from the claws holding onto her. Rising back to both her feet, her punch was already flying into the air. Every inch of power was summoned into Morgane's hand as she delivered an otherworldly uppercut. Boom! Immediately, a powerful shockwave rippled out as both spectral hands slapping onto Morgane were instantly smashed apart by her blazing fist. With a forceful yank, Morgane tore herself free from the binds around her feet. Slamming her feet to the ground, Her right leg pierced forth with power towards Kalidor faster than she could react. Boom! Arg! A groan of pain escaped Kalidor's lips as the heavy kick slammed into her stomach. The accumulated power was like a mountain being carved and thrown down onto her stomach from above, causing blood to pour out of her lips. Morgaine imposed all her power into her legs, sending Kalidor flying away like a rag doll once more. Bang! 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 The entire ground shook as Kalidor slammed her back into them, trying to drag herself to a stop. However, her face changed when her head snapped a 180-degree turn back, and all she saw were magnifying feet that slammed straight into her face, sending dark blood and teeth flying out as she was sent in the opposite direction. In the next few seconds, the entire world witnessed a shocking scene as Kalidor was played around the entire arena like a ball. Somehow, every attack of Morgaine seemed to increase in cruelty and speed with every strike. As more blood splashed out with each kick she gave to Kalidor. Her power became increasingly overwhelming by the second until Kalidor could do nothing but take endless strikes to her head. Eventually, Morgaine gave one last attack as Kalidor was sent crashing into the barrier itself. Blurg! Blood burst out from her lips as her back crashed into the barrier, but her blood-hacking motion was interrupted when a foot, brimming with golden energy, stamped into her head, cutting off the blood flow. Bang! 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 Rapidly followed were 5 successive stomps as Morgaine slammed her feet onto Kalidor's face before she slowly took her foot off. The spectators witnessed a chilling scene of Kalidor's head looking flattened, pressed tightly against the barrier. Trash! Morgaine spat out with indifference as she began walking away from the defeated body of Kalidor. But then, hee. Hey. The crowd watched on with narrowed eyes as the laugh rang out through the entire Colosseum, soon becoming a spine-chilling cackling scream. The battle seemed to have ended with Kalidor's head plastered all over the barrier, but soon they watched as an incredibly dark necrotic aura began rising up from Kalidor's disfigured figure, soon enclosing her in a cloud of smoke. Morgaine fully turned her body to the cloud of smoke, looking up as it rose into the air. She had no idea what her opponent was pulling, but she allowed her to continue whatever it was, her cold eyes betraying no emotion. This was the spirit of the Dominaire, a supreme confidence to crush their opponent absolutely in battle. She wanted her opponent to activate all the skills she had yet end up getting crushed beneath her feet once more. Only then would the world know there was no rivalry between the Dominaire and the Wailing Banshee family. Skrek. Suddenly, an incredibly loud screeching sound echoed throughout the entire arena as the shadows gathered above Kalidor, forming an entity whose mere aura made their hair stand on end, as an incredible wave of fear rippled throughout the entire arena. You will die. The simple words were ear-deafening and formed shockwaves, enough to send Morgaine's feet dragging forcefully along the ground. She came to a stop only 10 meters away, her eyes widening in shock. What power! The phantom object finally formed itself, solidifying into a dark entity as Kalidor's lips moved. Death's lament. In the Elder's booth of the arena, truly amazing. The secret arts of the Wailing Banshee family are said to be one of the most difficult secret techniques to master of the entire fallen race. Yet, it seems this genius has managed to master one of them. And not just any technique, moreover, but the 5th strongest of the techniques, Death's Lament. Even though the technique still seems unable to display its full power due to her weak cultivation, I would still say it is beyond what most geniuses here would be able to handle, an elder muttered, causing a majority of the elders to nod their heads in agreement. Now, let's see if the Dominaire genius can handle it. It was a colossal skeletal specter, towering over Morgaine and cloaked in tattered veils of shadow. The figure's hollow eyes blazed with green light, and its massive hands clawed the air, sending waves of necrotic energy surging across the arena. The wails of countless tormented souls echoed in Morgaine's ears in a horrifying cacophony, paralyzing her heart with sheer terror. As the specter loomed, the ground suddenly began cracking for the first time, as if it could not withstand the presence of death incarnate. How interesting! Morgaine said with a satisfied expression as her fear instantly dissipated. She got into a battle stance, her foot slamming into the ground as she pierced forth toward the specter with speed. Scrack! Immediately, the specter delivered an ear-piercing screech and quickly shot forward toward Morgaine, moving at thrice her speed. It arrived instantly before her. Morgaine's eyes widened in shock, not expecting the specter to move so fast, but she reacted almost instantly. Both of her arms jerked backward, and then she whispered, "Superiority Cascade." With a thunderous stomp, Morgaine smashed her fist forth, a brilliant arc of golden energy striking forward toward the specter. The cascade began as a modest wave, but then Morgaine began punching furiously with speed, her hands turning into a continuous afterimage. Immediately, the cascade grew even larger, brighter, and more destructive. The air hummed with energy, as a deafening roar accompanied the wave's advance, making it alive with Morgaine's unrelenting will. In response, the specter slashed out with its claws, sending a large claw-shaped phantom before the cascading wave and shattering about 10 layers in a single slash. But then the layers only grew stronger and continued their advance. Quickly, the battle shifted to one of intense, unrelenting will, cascading waves of golden energy colliding with phantoms of large clawed hands. A mushroom of energy rose into the air as the battle stage began shattering all around their radius. Shockwaves radiated outward, the very barrier surrounding them shining brilliantly as cracks kept appearing, only to be repaired. All of the geniuses had their mouths wide open in disbelief at the chaotic scene before them. They all knew one thing in their hearts. None of them would be able to last under such intense power. So this is the full extent of her power, huh? It is 10 times more powerful than what she showed in training. If she had gone all out like this when we first sparred, I would have been reduced to paste from this level of power. The thoughts echoed through the mind of Ryuk, who looked at the battle scene, a small smile tugging at his lips. D. With a fierce roar from Morgaine, both of her hands jerked back at once, and then she smashed them out at the same time, creating a gigantic wave of golden energy, twice as large as the rest. Immediately, dark shadows spiraled even more in power as the skeleton also slashed out its claws, its power having drastically increased compared to its previous slashes. Boom! An incredibly deafening explosion rang out, and Morgaine was violently thrown backward by it. Her feet dragged onto the ground as she struggled to keep hold of herself, but failed, slamming her back into the barrier and letting out a painful groan. Staring forward, the specter had also been moved backward but managed to stop itself just before it could slam into Calidor and reduce her to bits. Right now, Calidor was on the ground, seemingly unconscious, but one could see blood flowing from her lips and nose, along with the dark symbol of a claw on her forehead. So she shares her mana reserve with the spectral, passing her energy, and with the blood flowing from her nose, perhaps some of her life force too. If I want to end this battle, then I'd better ignore the spectral and try to finish her off, Morgaine said as she watched the spectral deliver another screech and shoot forward with speed toward her. You've really outdone yourself, Calidor, you really have. Now, I'll show you just what true power is, Morgaine said as her hand gained a sheen of gold and form a symbol of a crown and 2 gigantic wings tore out from her back, reaching a full meter in length and span. Domain expansion. Sovereign Bastion. What happened next shook the entire arena, and all the top 10 Ultima Genus, excluding Ignatius, rose to their feet in disbelief. But they weren't the only ones. All the instructors sitting in the instructor area shot to their feet as well. To add to the supreme shock, all of the elders in the elders' booth also rose to their feet, except for the half-fallen one herself, who merely wore an amused smirk on her face. Impossible! The moment the words were spoken, the air grew unnaturally still, as though time itself was hesitating. Immediately, a river of golden energy spread forth throughout the entire arena, quickly covering the area where the spectral figure had been stepping forward. In mere moments, the golden energy coalesced into a translucent ball that encapsulated the spectral entirely. Morgaine stepped forward, her eyes burning with golden flames that seemed to pierce through reality itself. A deep hum resonated from her very being, growing louder until it shook the battlefield. Slowly, her feet lifted off the ground as she raised both her hands to her chest, forming a runic symbol. In my domain, I reign supreme, so bow before your sovereign. Her voice was gentle, almost like a whisper, but the weight of her words seemed to alter the world itself. The spectral figure suddenly knelt to the ground, bowing on both knees. Invisible golden hands surged from within the domain, pinning the spectral figure down with overwhelming force. Skrek! A powerful screech of resistance echoed from the spectral figure as shockwaves rippled out from its body, colliding with the golden hands. Yet it achieved nothing, as Morgaine slowly floated forward toward the spectral figure. Her hand, covered in intricate runic glyphs, stretched out deliberately. Her hands landed on the forehead of the spectral entity. Slowly, her lips moved. "Be gone!" In the next instant, the entire weight and crushing force of the domain seemed to concentrate within Morgaine's fingers. All her golden energy was compressed into her palm, creating a devastating singular point of power. Instantly, a golden brilliance shot through the arena, radiating an explosion of blinding light. The brilliance seared through the entire arena, eradicating the spectral, completely seemingly wiping it off the living existence and leaving behind only the overwhelming echoes of Morgaine's presence. When the light faded completely, nothing remained but a scarred battlefield, cracks covering the entire area, reduced to utter ruins. "Wait! Where is Kalidor?" A student screamed in horror as Morgaine stood silently, her head staring around before she slowly raised it to the sky. Following her gaze, the rest of the arena turned their attention upward. They gasped as they saw a figure suspended in the air, a figure none other than the half-fallen one herself. In her arms lay the bloody, unconscious body of Kalidor. "I declare this battle over. The winner is Morgaine Dominaire." Her gentle voice rang out as an instructor hurriedly appeared before her, taking Kalidor's limp body from her hands. With a bow, the instructor vanished from the arena, rushing Kalidor to medical care. In the elder's booth, the half-fallen one sat back on her throne, regal as ever. Morgaine gave her a blank stare before walking away from the battlefield. She returned to her seat, closed her eyes, and remained motionless. How? A genius at the peak stage of the plane of ascension, already able to control a domain? The elder from the Wailing Banshee sect exclaimed, gnawing at her sleeves, as the other elders furrowed their brows at Morgaine, who sat silently with her eyes closed. A domain can only be formed by cultivators at the plane of dominion. Even those at the initial core stage find it hard to form one, and maintaining it, even if formed, is nearly impossible for them. Yet, she not only had the energy to open a domain, but she could even use it for her attacks. Just how talented is she? An elder asked in shock, as the half-fallen one slowly turned to them. The power used just now by Morgaine doesn't belong to her. The half-fallen one's voice rang out, silencing all the elders. Their eyes widened in disbelief. As some of you might already know, every fallen genius with a great background is granted a protective power at birth. It's a power meant to activate only in the face of death, to protect the genius from fatal harm. This power was granted by me during Morgaine's birth. It's a mini-domain where Morgaine's will become invincible. That power was what was just used by her. The half-fallen one explained, her voice calm and clear. The elder's eyes flickered with shock but soon narrowed in suspicion. But the protective power isn't something that can be accessed consciously by the one granted it, is it? It should only activate automatically in the face of death. Yet Morgaine seemed to have. Yes. The half-fallen one interrupted with a faint smile. Somehow, Morgaine found a way to control that energy at will. And not just that. She has also figured out a way to ensure she can always use it for her future attacks with her own energy. Does that mean she can activate this technique again with her own power? Technically, yes. But the energy required. The half-fallen one shook her head. Morgaine doesn't have enough mana yet. I'd say she would need to at least reach the core stage of the Plane of Dominion before she could activate such a technique again with her own power. This was a one-time show of power, and I'd say she used it pretty well. The half-fallen one concluded. The elders fell silent as the battles continued, though none of the subsequent matches could compare to Morgaine's display. Quickly, time passed, and after a long 5 hours, the call was made. And now, to the final battle of the final phase of the test. In the elders' booth, one of them spoke. "It's finally here, huh?" The thought echoed through the minds of the elders as they sat up properly, their eyes widening and blood rushing in anticipation. For the final battle of the test, the #1 ultimate genius since the beginning of the Fallen Arisen Hall training, and also a genius belonging to the Lost Igniting Embers family, the top 3 most powerful families of the entire Fallen families. Ignatius Blade. The voice of the instructor grew louder as the beam of light instantly pierced through the darkness and shone brightly on Ignatius' figure. A small, confident smile lay on Ignatius' face, his body seemingly at ease as he waved at the cheering students and bowed to the elders in respect. In response, the elders gave him a nod. And for his opponent, he is not a Fallen, but a human who arrived in the Arisen Hall just a month before this test, at only the initial stage of the Plane of Origin. Yet, in just 28 days, he was able to climb to the peak of the Plane of Origin, passing the preliminary and semi-final tests to arrive at this phase of the test. One whose appearance is based on the recommendation and trust of the half-fallen one herself. Ryuk. The light shone brightly onto Ryuk's figure as he slowly rose to his feet. The world, for a few seconds, seemed to grow silent for Ryuk as he slowly raised his head to the elders' booth. Their gazes were either indifferent or steely, and the only one who wore a small smile was the half-fallen one herself. Whether it was a smile of encouragement or amusement, Ryuk had no idea. She was as unreadable as ever. Ignatius stepped forward confidently to the battle stage, as Ryuk also got down from the stands. His hand was grabbed at the last second, and as he turned, his gaze met Quinn's, whose face held a serious yet worried expression. Their eyes briefly met before the golden-haired boy struggled to form a smile. "You got this, Ryuk. I trust you." A surprised expression appeared on Ryuk's face for a while. Wasn't Quinn the one who always said there was no way for a top 10 ultimate genius to be defeated? But in a way, wasn't he right? Right now, all the top 10 ultimate geniuses had won their fights except for Caldir Whale. And the only reason for that was because she was matched with another top 10 genius. If she had been matched with anyone else, she would have no doubt won. That meant Quinn had really been right. The power of the top 10 ultimate geniuses was unmatched. Yet, right now, as Ryuk walked forward to face perhaps one of the most powerful geniuses of them all, Quinn told him he would win. It was so unlike him. Perhaps he was just trying to cheer Ryuk up. Somehow, Ryuk was right about that. Quinn had initially wanted to tell Ryuk not to push himself too hard, but with the threat of death looming over Ryuk's head, it was a stupid statement. So, in the end, Quinn could only reveal the faint belief he had always held in his heart. That maybe he was wrong. That maybe fate truly wasn't set in stone. He had come to watch this battle, hoping to have his ideology of fate shattered. His ideology that some people were just not the ones for it. But throughout this battle, Quinn had been nothing but disappointed. All the geniuses had been defeated one by the ultimate geniuses, and in the end, the bitter truth became evident. The only last choice was Ryuk, and Quinn tried as much as possible to hold onto that hope which he knew well was impossible. Could I really be right? Could it be that fate has truly been set in stone and none of us can change it? Don't worry, Quinn. Ryuk's voice woke him up as he turned to look at Ryuk, who had a confident grin on his handsome face. I'll hand Ignatius' ass to him. You just watch, he said, and Quinn managed to chuckle from the joke before finally releasing Ryuk's hand, watching as he slowly climbed onto the stage. In the Elder Booths area, sorry to disturb your Fallen's peace, but I have to say, there is quite something that toggles at my heart, and I would argue it toggles at the heart of every elder sitting here. A voice suddenly rang out from behind, belonging to none other than a fallen elder, whose eyes seemed to burn with silver flames. His hair was short, silver in color, and he wore a silver shirt and trousers, looking casual, yet seemingly in his prime middle-aged years. He was the elder of the Ignatius family, and right now various questions were tugging at his heart. Why would the half-fallen one recommend a human to the stage prepared solely for their geniuses? Just what was the origin or background of the human that gave him such importance? The questions were all that were gaining not only in Elder Byrne's heart but in the hearts of the other elders. Slowly, the half-fallen one turned her head as she looked at the elder, smiled, and turned her head away. I know well the questions in all of your hearts, and my answer is simple. You all just watch. Silence encased the entire hall as everyone turned their attention to the stage. The instructor soon called out a loud begin. Order. But neither Ignatius nor Ryuk made any move. The silence was palpable, and soon words broke through the entire stage, ringing in the ears of everyone present. We meet once again, human, just like we both have hoped, or at least I have hoped. Ignatius began as Ryuk sighed before a small smile broke on his face. I too expected us to meet in the test, Ignatius. But to stand before you in battle? That I would say is out of the blue. Ryuk replied, genuine honesty lacing his voice. Ignatius slowly raised both hands, and as he did, flickering silver flames began burning in them. So what will you say it is, human? Luck or unfortunate fate? He asked, as he slowly began stepping forward toward Ryuk. 2 balls of silver flames quickly formed around his arms, floating upwards as they hung all around Ignatius, burning gently. And with every step their number increased until they were completely all around Ignatius, their numbers reaching close to 100. The hearts of the spectators tightened in their chests at the sight of the ghostly silver flame balls. The unlucky fate seemed more likely, no? Ryuk's undaunted voice rang out as he cracked his back and neck, and in the next instant, boom! The air on the path of his face was blown apart as a ball of flame passed right through his face. But it was nothing but an afterimage as the world witnessed Ryuk standing easily 2 meters away from where he formerly stood. Pretty honest for a weak one. You've always been weird for that, Ignatius said as he slowly returned his gaze to Ryuk. Once more, a ball of flame moved with speed toward Ryuk, who slowly stretched out his hand and grabbed at it. Idiot! The thought resonated in the mind of Ignatius. The battle was over before it even began. Ryuk's hand grabbed at the ball, and instantly, the sound of his own flesh burning up resounded. Quickly, like flames racing through a bush of dried leaves, the flames began spreading, soon covering all of Ryuk's hand up to his wrist. For reasons unknown to Ignatius, the flames never moved past Ryuk's wrist. The world took a gasp when they witnessed Ryuk's left hand fade away into nothing but ashes, leaving only a stump that wouldn't stop dripping blood. Tell me, human, how does it feel to be burned away to nothing but ashes? Ignatius asked as Ryuk's toppled hand remained floating in the air. But then, slowly, he took his hand down, and the world dropped their jaws in disbelief when they watched all of the blood floating out of Ryuk's stump begin moving back up into his arm. In the next instant, the blood entered back into his body as bones began easily replicating each other. Quickly, new skin covered them up, and with a bit of stretching, Ryuk had regained his entire hand once more. Surprisingly painless, and not as hot as I thought it would be, Ryuk remarked, as Ignatius' eyebrows furrowed. But then, Ryuk began advancing forward. If that is all your flame is capable of, then let's put an end to this circus show, Ignatius, he called out, and in the next instant, Ryuk's body shot forward with speed, as the entire ground beneath him shattered into nothing but fragments of glass. Boom! 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 A loud noise erupted as the entire balls around Ignatius soared forward with speed. Frost Veil! Immediately, a world of ice and snow unfurled before Ryuk, carefully slowing down the flying balls, albeit barely. With even more mind-numbing speed, Ryuk's body was like a snake weaving through obstacles, as he instantly danced around the balls of flame. In the next moment, his feet stepped out of the wall of flames formed by Ignatius. Immediately, His punch jerked backward as he slammed it toward the young man's face. Boom! A heavy explosion resounded throughout the entire world as Ryuk's fist slammed head-on into Ignatius' face, instantly sending the young man's head slamming toward the floor. Before it could reach the ground, it stopped, and Ryuk instantly jerked down his right elbow, smashing straight into Ignatius' stomach and fully slamming him into the ground. But then, boom! A heavy explosion resounded as a flaming punch magnified before Ryuk's gaze through the dust. He hurriedly tapped his legs on the ground, watching as the punch barely missed, smashing into his face by an inch. Landing onto both of his feet, Ryuk held a cautious light as he looked at both of his hands. Right now, he had lost both hands, up to their elbows, but they were quickly regenerating. Ignoring his wounds, Ryuk looked at Ignatius, and slowly, he heard the sound of footsteps ringing through the room. What appeared was not Ignatius. It was a fallen figure who seemed to be the incarnation of a burning man. Right now, silver runic lines were all over the upper part of Ignatius' body, gently burning with silver flames. His clothes had been burned off, leaving him with only trousers, which seemed to have been made of some special material resistant to his own flames. Your regeneration, speed, and punching power are the best I have ever seen for an Origin Plane cultivator, Ignatius said, slowly walking forward, but Ryuk's eyes widened to their limit in shock as he found a figure standing before him, mere inches away from his face in less than 1/10 of a second later. But you're still too far off from my level, Ignatius said as Ryuk instantly smashed out a fist, but Ignatius made no move to dodge it. The second Ryuk's fist smashed against Ignatius' body, the silver flames instantly swallowed Ryuk's arm, burning it into nothing but ashes. In response, Ignatius slammed out a knee toward Ryuk's stomach. Boom! The kick perfectly connected with no sort of protection, and instantly Ryuk was raised off his feet, sent flying into the distance, smashing into the ground continuously before skidding to a stop. Pierce! The second Ryuk landed onto the ground. He hurriedly moved his head to the side, and immediately, the edge of a flaming sword slammed into the ground, piercing it. Ryuk's back muscles twitched as he jumped back into the air. Ignatius' skill. Infernal blade dance. Looking at Ignatius, above the young man's airspace were dozens upon dozens of short swords covered in the same silver flames. They were just like the fireballs, except this time, they were swords, and their aura was enough to make Ryuk's heart race. This is tricky. He's not afraid of my attacks. Now that he has become a flaming man, any minute contact with his body affects me instead. My arms are instantly burned away, and even with my crazy regeneration, my entire fists are at least burned off before my nanobody regeneration keeps up and halts the flame's effect. In short, he's like a fire I can't touch. And knowing that, he also doesn't dodge my blows, focusing instead on causing me as much damage as possible. Ryuk mused as he felt the stinging pain in his own stomach. The cloth at his stomach had been burned away, revealing red flesh that kept sizzling. Just how am I supposed to beat something I can't touch? Ryuk asked himself as the dozens of swords instantly pierced forth toward him. Their speed was 3 times that of the previous fireballs, and they appeared before him almost instantly, clouding his entire vision. Activate Nano Reaper, Ryuk whispered, and in the instant, the gigantic scythe appeared in his grasp. Instantly, he shot forward toward the flaming swords, his scythe slashing out with speed. Boom, 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 boom. The entire arena immediately became a world of explosions as Ryuk figured his way through the world of swords, his scythe revolving around him with devastating speed and ripping the entire swords into 2 clean halves. So this is the fine blade, huh? Ignatius roared in excitement as Ryuk sliced through the last sword. In the next instant, he twirled twice in the air, and the scythe instantly soared forward with speed, thrown by Ryuk toward Ignatius, who instantly sidestepped, the scythe passing mere inches from his face. Boom! The instant Ignatius turned back, a kick slammed into his chest, causing him to take 5 steps backward. In the next instant, Ryuk's scythe revolved in a circle in the air, landed back into his hand, and instantly he cleaved downward toward Ignatius's retreating figure. Bang! Immediately, a heavy explosion resounded as Ignatius's burning arm furiously punched toward the scythe. The power behind it was enough to send Ryuk's arm jerking backward as he took 3 steps backward. Yet he once more faded away in the next second as Ignatius raised his head to the airspace above him, watching as the scythe cleaved down once more. Boom! Another thunderous explosion resounded as swords of flames instantly appeared in the path of the scythe, acting as shields that roughly smashed together with the scythe, but they were blown apart into nothing. In the next instant, it became an all-out war, as Ryuk's image split into hundreds, his scythe image increasing by hundreds of times, slashing around with horrific speed toward Ignatius, who rapidly retreated under the barrage, opting to use his swords to block the slashes. But quickly, Ignatius's brows furrowed before his eyes unconsciously flashed a worried light for the first time. The scythe. There is something wrong about it, Ignatius mused in his head. He could see that the scythe was somehow speeding up in its ability to slice up his swords, but he could also sense Ryuk wasn't increasing his power. It is like the scythe's strength was growing with every passing second. Ignatius thought in shock laced with confusion, as dozens of swords were instantly sent flying toward Ryuk once more. But with a slash, he cut through them all before using the momentum to rise up and slash forward straight into Ignatius, his speed momentarily increasing. Immediately, Ignatius punched outward once more, but then, R.I.P. What followed was the sound of the scythe passing through Ignatius's wrist like a knife through butter as Ryuk coldly changed the scythe's path, cleaving through Ignatius's wrist. Immediately, Ignatius's hand soared toward Ryuk's face as he slapped it away with the back of his hand, sending his scythe flashing forward once more. What's happening? Ignatius wondered as he felt pain shoot up to his head. He saw Ryuk slap away a severed hand, but he was barely given time to react as another scythe was already flashing toward his face. R.I.P. The scythe cleaved through his second arm, severing it straight down to his elbows. Ryuk twisted the scythe, cutting even deeper until he tore the scythe out of Ignatius's shoulder, slashing by the side of his head as Ignatius hurriedly placed his head smoothly over his shoulder, dodging the lash by mere inches. Half of his entire arm was sent flying away into the air. Boom! A heavy explosion resounded as Ryuk's legs slammed straight into Ignatius's chest, sending him flying into the ground as he bounced a couple of times before coming to a stop. His back slammed into the barrier, and blood poured out from the side of his lips. Immediately, silence filled the entire Colosseum as they watched Ryuk calmly step forward with his huge scythe dragging down beneath him and the defeated, sorry figure of Ignatius whose back pressed against the barrier. Slowly, Ignatius looked at his own arms in ultimate fear and watching as red blood shot out of the wounds. He slowly raised his head in shock, but all he felt was Ryuk magnifying the scythe, which cleaved straight toward his face, seemingly wanting to divide his head into 2 smooth halves. Cataclysm embers, Ignatius called out at the last second, his body suddenly bursting out with ghostly white flames and like an ocean wave sneaking with speed toward Ryuk and then exploding outward. Kaboom! The explosion was unlike any other, as Ryuk was instantly sent flying away from where he stood, slamming into the ground and reducing his speed by slamming his scythe into the ground. His legs dug deep into the arena as massive flames burst out from the friction of his feet, before he finally managed to pause. His sword skill is the first, and this should be the second. He should only be able to use 2 skills since he's still only at the plane of ascension. This skill was powerful, but it can't defat my nanobody. So this is all Ignatius Blade really is capable of. If so, I can defeat him, he thought as he ignored the various burns on his face, looking at Ignatius, who was now back on his feet and stepping forward toward him. No! Something is different, Ryuk mused with narrowed eyes as he watched Ignatius slowly exit the explosion. Right now, he was no longer burning with flames from every part of his body, and all of the runes on his body were concentrated onto his arms which had already regenerated. Slowly, he raised them into the air as the arena fell into a deafening silence. White flames grew on Ignatius's arms, flickering unnaturally, but then they began fading into an unnatural dark blur at the edges. The air itself seemed to recoil in terror, vibrating with a sinister hum as Ryuk felt his heartbeat crazily increasing. It was his body sensing the danger and reacting to it. Ignatius's golden eyes turned away from his raised hand to Ryuk, who couldn't help but notice his golden eyes burning brighter, just like that of Morgane when she activated her domain. Don't tell me. Witness the realm of absolute annihilation, human, Ignatius declared, his voice echoing with an unnatural resonance. Domain expansion. Impossible. Remnants cinders of an ashen world. Ignatius' ashen world domain took form, transforming the battlefield into a hellscape of perpetual destruction. The ground was now a volcanic wasteland, rivers of molten lava coursing through the broken, charred terrain. Any remnants of life disintegrated into ash the moment they were touched, and even the surrounding ground sizzled, seemingly being burned to nothing. The air itself was thick with scorching heat, making it almost impossible to breathe. Within this domain, Ignatius, who had already healed up his severe wounds, stood as its ruler. His figure emanated an ethereal glow of pure flame, the air around him undulating with destructive ripple of energy. Unbelievable. Simply unbelievable. The secret arts of the Burning family are very few in number, perhaps the smallest among the family's secret techniques. Yet we are able to remain one of the top 3 most powerful Lost Fallen families. This is because, while our techniques are limited, they are incredibly powerful. And one of these techniques is none other than an inherited domain expansion technique, Remnants of an Ashen World. There are very few secret arts that grant a user a domain upon activation, so few they can be counted on one hand. But we of the Ignatius family are fortunate enough to possess such an art. Still, it is so difficult that only those with the purest of bloodlines can tap into this power. One such genius with a pure bloodline is Ignatius. He has been able to almost fully master the first step of the technique at just 19 years old. A true prodigy he is, the elder of the Igniting Embers clan explained, unconcealed pride in his voice, as the other elders flashed in amazement. They all couldn't help but turn to the battlefield, and quickly, they could sense the change in tides. There is no way the human boy will be able to survive this. Even if Ignatius does nothing but wait, the boy will soon burn to nothing but cinders if he dares remain in the domain for long. An elder noted as they turned their gazes to the half-fallen, who simply sat silently, not making any comments and simply watching. Hot. Flaming hot. The heat was palpable, forcing Ryuk to back away from Ignatius, yet it did nothing at all. The concentration of heat was present in equal power in all the areas within the domain. Slowly raising his hands, Ryuk saw his skin begin drying up and fading into nothing but ashes. Even as his regeneration hurriedly tried to fix it, the heat was simply too unbearable, and it was slowly losing out. So hot, Ryuk said through clenched teeth as he hurriedly activated Frost Veil. The mist began spreading all around him, but it was instantly burned off by the incredible increase in temperature. Ryuk immediately reacted, choosing to let Frost Veil cover only his body instead of the entire area. Warning. Mana. 50, -30. Yet, even then, his mana could only hold out so much as the furious heat drained it further, forcing Ryuk to expend even more just to keep Frost Veil activated. You fought your hardest, Ryuk. Ignatius' voice rang out as he slowly began walking forward toward Ryuk, stretching his arm toward him. Immediately, Ryuk's face changed as he saw the flames begin coalescing in the air. Soon, swords of flame formed all around the domain. They covered absolutely everywhere, and this time each sword was a meter in length, their aura of flames seeming to have tripled in intensity. Ryuk's hand tightened around his scythe as sweat rained down his face like water. It was already hard enough trying not to get burned to death in the domain, and now he had to fight all of this off. Let this circus show come to an end, Ignatius said with a smirk, and in the next instant, he waved his hand forward. Like a supreme command, Swords rained down on Ryuk from absolutely every direction, leaving him no chance to run at all. Run? Try and weave through the attacks? No, none of this will work. To weave through this many, I will need at least a minute to finish. My stamina is hitting rock bottom fast. Same for my mana. If I choose to run, and after a minute, I'll be completely spent of both mana and endurance. It's unknown what Ignatius is still capable of, but he doesn't seem like one who would be kneeling anytime soon. I can't run from this, so I can only stand and face it head-on. Ryuk muttered, and in the next instant, the scythe began to spin with incredible speed as Ryuk twisted it around his body. It was something he had practiced for fun, to make the scythe form a mini-barrier that ensured nothing got past it without being sliced to bits. And now, there was no better time to use it as instantly, dark beams of energy erupted from the scythe, surrounding Ryuk's figure. The sharp scythe blade tore through every single sword attack. Boom! 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 The attacks came like unending rain, continually battering Ryuk. What made him grind his teeth was the explosions. When every sword was slashed, it exploded, sending flames flying onto Ryuk and draining away the layer of frost veil that he used to cool himself off. Seconds passed quickly, yet it felt like years to Ryuk, who struggled more and more to keep up. The swords flew from above, wanting to rend him to pieces, while the heat waves came from all around, grinding away at frost veil as quickly as they could, making Ryuk suffer even more. Eventually, a minute passed, and Ryuk finally managed to slash apart the last sword, but he instantly collapsed onto his knees, the giant scythe barely holding him up. Ah! Ah! A wave of exhaustion hit Ryuk immediately, his head growing incredibly lightheaded. But suddenly, his face changed as he slashed out with his scythe. However, in his already exhausted state, the slash was incredibly slow, and a kick smashed straight into Ryuk's face, sending him flying backward as he crashed into the barrier. Slowly sliding down, Ryuk's eyes bulged as a hand wrapped around his neck, lifting him into the air. Ignatius' indifferent eyes matched his as he held Ryuk up like he was nothing but a bug before shifting his left hand to the side. A large blade appeared, and then, R.I.P. Blood spilled out of Ryuk's lips as he felt something hot piercing through his stomach. Ignatius' gigantic blade tore out of Ryuk's back, and he finally dropped him to the ground, forcing Ryuk to kneel before him, his soulless gaze looking at his feet. Your struggle is noteworthy, and for that I'll save you your dignity. Surrender, and I'll graciously end your pain. Go on. Surrender, huh? Surrender to what? Sure death? The thought echoed in Ryuk's mind as he looked at the burning magma grounds. He knew well what fate awaited him if he dared to lose this battle. That was why, even if it would kill him, he had no choice but to win. I have to win. I have to win. I have to win. No, I will win. The thoughts echoed throughout Ryuk's existence as his mind drifted past what else he could do. Warning. Activation of Nano-Umbral Reaper is highly inadvisable. Advice to revoke the technique will be given. In the next instant, he jerked his head up toward Ignatius, a crazy smile on his face. Get lost. Activate Nano-Umbral Reaper, Ryuk ordered in his mind. The system notification blared red all over his face, but Ryuk paid it no mind. Error. Advice not taken. Nano-Umbral Reaper will now be activated. Host will now proceed at his own peril. Roar. An inhumane roar exploded outward toward Ignatius, followed by a wave of dark power that pushed him off his feet. He gently soared through the air and landed 10 meters away. What the? Ignatius thought, his eyes flashing in shock and horror as he looked at the inhumane transformation before him. The moment Ryuk activated the technique, it was like the doors containing a colossal amount of energy had suddenly opened within his heart, causing him to roar out from the incredible and sudden power ravaging his body. Suddenly, his body began contorting violently, as his skin suddenly cracked, and then they shattered apart, revealing streaks of molten lava that dripped underneath them. His bones elongated as his height rapidly increased from his previous 1.8 meters to a full 2 meters. Ryuk raised himself up, a shocking amount of steam bursting out of his lips as he raised his head toward Ignatius, who had paused in terror. Now Ignatius could see it. Ryuk's eyes had become orbs of molten light, glowing with an intensity that seemed to pierce through his very soul. From the corners of his eyes, thick streams of glowing lava-like tears flowed constantly, sizzling as they dripped down his face. Arg! An inhumane grunt escaped Ryuk's lips as another colossal pain ripped through his head. Once more, the transformation worsened as Ryuk raised his hands to his face. He watched as they grotesquely elongated, their structure reshaped into monstrous scythe-like appendages. His hands had turned into humongous claws, each finger radiating a shifting energy as if reality bent around them. His nano-reaper, the dark 2-meter scythe, overly large, had now perfectly fused with the size of his right arm. Once looking oversized for Ryuk, it was now the perfect fit, resting tightly in his grasp and connected to him by glowing, netted veins. The scythe itself changed to a completely jet-black exterior, its edges outlined in a crimson glow. His legs were reinforced by thick, jagged armor-like plating, which appeared to grow organically from his body. The plating tapered into sharp, clawed feet, giving him a predatory stance. Boom! 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 His steps were incredibly heavy and deliberate, the ground cracking and sizzling beneath him as if unable to bear his presence. Sprouting out of Ryuk's back were jagged, razor-sharp wings made of floating nanite shards. The shards shifted independently, changing in size and formation, faintly orbiting him. These wings did not seem to provide actual flight but acted as both offensive weapons and a shield. Surrounding Ryuk's entire figure was a shifting aura of darkness, filled with faint crimson sparks and swirling ash. The very air around him grew heavy, oppressive, and cold, as if the life force of the battlefield was being drained into his form. The silence of it all was occasionally broken by low, resonating pulses, akin to the beating of a colossal heart deep within the void. What? What the hell is that transformation? A beast! The Genius area buzzer loudly with confusion as they all felt a terrifying aura that sent shivers tingling down their spines. But it wasn't only the geniuses. The instructors all rose to their feet, their eyes flashing with shock and doubt. They didn't know whether to stop the battle or not. What form exactly had Ryuk taken? They could only watch, waiting helplessly to see for themselves. The Elders area was the most silent. Even though all of the Elders had the most shock on their faces, they couldn't recognize the transformation. Despite their centuries-old knowledge of various existences, it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Instantly, they could only look toward the half-fallen one, who still made no remarks at all but confidently sat in her chair and watched. Ryuk never stopped stepping forward, every step rendering cracks across the ground, steam bubbling out of his nose and mouth unceasingly. His eyes were locked onto Ignatius, whose confident expression had been wiped clean from his face. Your domain! The growl rang clear, yet thick, throughout the entire arena as Ryuk stepped forth, soon appearing 5 meters away from Ignatius. Is nothing before me? I gave you a chance to surrender, but you refused my benevolence. Now I'm afraid I have no choice but to forcefully make you go uncon, Ignatius was saying when Ryuk faded away into thin air. Suddenly, a shadow completely covered Ignatius's figure as Ryuk stood above him. His aura was palpable, his eyes revealing that of a fierce predator. Do you not understand? Ryuk asked. And then, rip. It was the droning sound of space being ripped apart to nothing but cinders as Ryuk's scythe slashed through the burning air, creating fissures of void-like darkness that completely extinguished the flame aura all around the area. Instantly, it made it cleaved toward Ignatius, whose eyes flashed as a shield made of burning swords appeared around him. But then, rip, the shields were instantly sliced apart in a fiery explosion, as the scythe barely missed Ignatius, who instantly moved 20 meters backward with a single tap. Yet he collapsed onto his knees right after. Blurg! Blood splashed out of Ignatius' lips as he looked at his own chest, finding the blood that dripped down it. How? The blade never even touched me? Ignatius thought to himself with eyes in shock, but he was awakened when he heard the heavy steps slowly moving forward towards him. Boom, boom, boom. Ryuk. Ignatius roared out in fiery anger as the flames around him exploded into a pillar into the sky, and his scorching aura grew threefold. Veins popped all over Ignatius' face as he raised both hands with all his power, and cyclones of flame began rising up from the ground. A total of 5 that surrounded Ignatius' figure. Don't take my kindness for weakness. In an instant, his arms jerked forward as the cyclones of energy exploded outward, but it was as if Ryuk had lost all reasoning. A sinister gleam flashed in his molten eyes as he tore forward into the storm of flames. RIP. His scythe instantly cleaved forward, slicing completely through the storm and tearing through its entire frame. Instantly, he was faced with 2 arcs of famed cyclones rushing toward him from the sides. Ryuk instantly roared and spun on his feet, his scythe swinging around him once more, cleaving the 2 cyclones to bits. Jumping into the sky, his figure soared 5 meters into the air, arriving at the top of the fiery cyclone. His scythe cleaved downward with immense power. A monumental explosion of flame and energy danced through the entire battle stage, shattering the barrier around the arena, sending shards into countless pieces. The power was unlike anything the audience had ever seen, and an eerie quiet quickly filled the air. The top of the arena shimmered, and a new shield encapsulated the battlefield, replacing the shattered one and preventing the explosion from spreading outward. How? How is this possible? The thought echoed through Ignatius' mind as cyclones after cyclones were being formed by him. Yet he watched as his opponent brutally tore through each cyclone with his scythe, ripping everything into bits. Such fervor, such power, such insurmountable will. The thoughts continued to echo in Ignatius' mind as he sped forward toward Ryuk, hundreds of flaming swords following tightly behind him. In an instant, he closed the distance and engaged in close combat. Boom! Boom! Oh! Swords clashed against scythes, and punches crashed against claws. Ignatius' arms were ripped apart by Ryuk's heavy claws as his fierce kick slammed into his ribs, sending blood spraying out from his mouth. Yet he smiled through the pain as he slammed an overhead kick onto the side of Ryuk's face, sending him staggering 2 steps to the side. But then, boom! Ignatius' face twisted as he was lifted off his feet by a knee kick, causing him to soar into the air, slamming backward repeatedly before dragging himself to a stop. Boom! 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 The entire floor shook with unrelenting momentum as Ignatius raised his head. Finding no one in front of him, he instinctively turned his gaze upward. He was met with Ryuk's heavy figure and an enormous scythe cleaving toward his head. Instantly, he raised both arms, attempting to block the scythe, a fatal mistake. RIP. Like a hot knife through butter, the scythe cleaved into Ignatius' arms, slicing through them completely before proceeding to pierce into his chest. Blood unconsciously splattered out of Ignatius' lips. I had thought I was the rightful king of the geniuses. I had thought the crown was mine to wear, and this arena was nothing but a fact to prove that. Have I finally met my match? The thoughts echoed endlessly in Ignatius' mind as red blood splashed onto Ryuk's face. Slowly, Ryuk tore his scythe out from Ignatius' chest. But then, a hand grabbed onto Ryuk's scythe, jerking it downward as it dug deeper into Ignatius' body. In so doing, Ryuk's head was also jerked down and grabbed by Ignatius' now regenerated arms. Ignatius flashed an insane smile. So what if you're strong? Nothing in this world can't be annihilated. Nothing in this world can't be burned to death. So burn for me, Ryuk. Buyuarurn. Firestorm Genesis. Ignatius roared out as flames burst out of his hands, this time silvery white in color. Instantly, all of the lava in the arena ascended into the air, forming large columns that slammed downward towards both Ryuk and Ignatius, covering their entire figures. The entire crowd stood on their feet, watching as both geniuses drowned each other in lava. Ryuk's scythe had been buried deep in Ignatius' chest, and now both of them were covered in flames and lava. Will Ryuk be burned to death since Ignatius was immune to his own flames, or will Ignatius succumb to the scythe wound first? Who will be the winner? Who will be the loser? Slowly, the lava of energy died down, exhausting its power as the world witnessed a large amount of smoke covering the entire area. But as the smoke began clearing, gasps and furrowed brows followed the next scene. Is that an anaconda? The shocked words rang out through the arena as everyone finally saw the scene. Right now, the scene had almost no difference from before, except now, a gigantic white-scaled snake rose above Ryuk's figure, absolutely shielding him from every single drop of lava that fell. Its body was so massive that it managed to cover Ryuk's 2-meter frame completely. From the sides of its strange banners like those of a cobra appeared, spreading wide and expertly deflecting the lava away from Ryuk. But the snake itself was undamaged, as spikes of ice surrounded it, encasing the molten lava. In the end, all of the flames had been buried, frozen into ice blocks. Ryuk still stood there, his scythe buried in Ignatius' chest. Calmly he tore it out, causing Ignatius to cough out even more blood. Yet his eyes were locked onto the gigantic anaconda behind Ryuk. Host's energy has been fully depleted. Nano-Umbral Reaper transformation will now be cancelled. The system's notification rang out as Ryuk's transformation slowly faded away, returning him to his human figure of 1.8 meters. Following that, Isha's gigantic body began reducing until it took its tiny python form. Slowly, it wrapped itself around Ryuk's arm, runic lines appearing all over it. Quickly, all of Ryuk's wounds began to heal as he felt mana once more pouring into his body, its source none other than Isha. Ryuk's scythe slowly disappeared as he stepped back from Ignatius' bloody figure. No! I'm not done yet, Ignatius roared, but his movements instantly ceased as Ryuk's lips moved. Activate King's aura. My fame. My power. How can I lose it all to a pathetic human whose name I refuse to acknowledge? I won't. I won't stop fighting, Ignatius thought, his anger flaring up. But then he rose to a knee and suddenly, his eyes jerked to look at Ryuk's eyes, which were uncannily radiating an intense blue light, a steady runic rune flashing in them. Activate King's aura. Immediately, Ignatius staggered backward, falling on his but as he slowly backed away in fear. A scene that shocked everyone in the arena. An overwhelming force rushed through the entire arena, felt faintly by even the elders and instructors, whose eyes flashed in caution. How? What? Ignatius barely spoke a word, his lips repeatedly moving, his mind numb and thoughtless. The air, previously thick with the heat of his own flames, now seemed to press down on him with a weight beyond comprehension. It wasn't just physical, this was a pressure that gripped his soul. As Ryuk rose to his full imposing height, Isha's head tilted beside his, staring chillingly at Ignatius. The same runic blue line in Ryuk's eyes also flashed in hers, a suffocating aura overwhelming from both of them, extensions of the sovereign presence now emanating from Ryuk. The glow in Ryuk's molten eyes burned brighter, but it was not the fiery rage of battle like before. No, it was the cold, absolute gaze of a king demanding submission. For the first time, Ignatius felt his fire waver. The inferno that had always surged within him, unrelenting and untamable, now sputtered like a dying ember. His instincts screamed at him to rise, to fight, to not lose his precious fame, yet his body refused to move. Ryuk's oppressive aura crushed his resolve, as if countless unseen arms were pinning him deeper into the scorched ground. The strength he had relied on for so long, that had granted him so much confidence, that he had thought made remembering the names of other geniuses a privilege to them, was now dwarfed by the overwhelming presence before him. He felt stripped bare, vulnerable in a way he had never known. And then came the voice. Not a roar, not a taunt, but a low, commanding growl that echoed with the weight of absolute sovereignty. Surrender. In that moment, Ignatius saw not just Ryuk, but the endless shadows of beasts behind him, each one fierce and utterly loyal. They bore down on him with spectral fangs and claws, their presence a silent declaration of Ryuk's supreme authority. I can't. The thought echoed in Ignatius's head. Yet when his lips moved, I surrender. His voice echoed through the arena, drawing gasps from the geniuses, who all stood rooted in shock. Everyone was only awakened when Ryuk stepped away from Ignatius. I declare the winner to be the human boy, Ryuk. The voice came from one of the elders' booths, and its source was none other than the half-fallen one herself, who was now rising onto her feet. Slowly, she clapped once, and then once more, and then once more. Instantly, clap, clap, clap. The sound of the claps roared through the entire Colosseum as everyone, elders, geniuses, the instructors, all rose up. Some of the geniuses who had failed in the semi-final stage collapsed onto their knees as they shed tears of joy. The one who wailed the most loudly was none other than the Quinn himself, as tears streamed out from both his eyes, and his nose grew watery, yet he ignored it all as he clapped as hard as he could. Winner, Ryuk! The louder declaration erupted from the instructor, who finally refrained himself as cheers grew louder, and Ryuk turned to the elder's booth, giving a respectful bow, before walking out of the arena and back to his seat. But midway, many thoughts were running through Ryuk's mind. So this is it. This is what it means. The claps, the screams of joy, the disbelief, the tears. It's so unreal. I have never felt this before. Ryuk thought to himself, yet his eyes couldn't help but drift behind him, as he found an instructor arrive before the unconscious body of Ignatius and take him away from the arena. Yet, what of Ignatius? He is a phenomenal genius with not only overwhelming power but with even more overwhelming potential. Yet, what is there for him? None of the people clapping for me remember him anymore. Somehow, I feel like his essence is slowly fading away as he is carried away. Like his existence is being erased from existence itself. So this is what it means to win. To ruin another's chance at life in order to better yours. Yet there is no guilt within me. If I hadn't fought so fiercely, if I hadn't given it my all, right now, I would be the one being carried out and probably never waking up again. I did what was necessary to survive. Yes. Now, I finally understand. All I had done was to survive, and I have achieved that by winning. So that's what it means, huh? Today, on the precipice of his first life win, Ryuk learned an important lesson, which he thought to himself. In this world, you win to survive, and that's the harsh reality of a world called Endearth. Do you all remember the events from 50 years ago? The half-fallen's voice resonated through the entire booth as the elders all turned their attention to her. Does your fallen mean the disappearance of one of top 3 supreme-level geniuses? An elder asked as the half-fallen one nodded. Yes. Jack Fallen disappeared exactly 50 years ago, one of the top 3 most powerful geniuses in the entire history of the Flame Clan. With a potential so immense, there are only 5 other entities in this world that can rival him. Exactly a month ago, this young human boy appeared before me with an authority card, she continued. He claimed he was from Grade E, and judging by how he looks, I can't argue otherwise. He stretched the card before me, and it was no ordinary card. In fact, only 10 people in the entire world possess that type of card, and I have been able to confirm that, and all 10 have not been turned over. One of these people from the 10 is Jack Crimson, and by my results, all 9 apart from him still have their card. And now, a common boy from Grade E possesses the card, turning it in exchange for access to the Academy of Ascension. Now, do you all understand? The half-fallen said as all the elders' eyes flashed in shock. They looked at the half-fallen, who turned her gaze away from them and returned to look at Ryuk, who currently had a golden-haired boy tied around his neck and crying profusely over his shoulder. So this human boy could have only obtained the card from Jack? An elder asked, and the half-fallen nodded. If my intuition is correct, This boy is the ultimate map by which we will eventually track down our fallen genius. He's a great hope for the Fallen clan, just as much as Jack Fallen himself is. I hope that answers all of your questions. You survived, Ryuk. You really survived. Quinn burst into tears as he jumped into Ryuk's embrace as if he was a kid. It was as if he was the one who had won, and not Ryuk. Quinn's world had come crashing down throughout the finals. As much as he wanted to believe that he himself was simply not made to be a genius, he had always hoped in his heart for someone to one day come and prove him wrong. And in the end, a person had done it. A person who had never once looked down upon him, and who had treated him as if he was an existence equal to him, unlike all of the people he had met in his life. One who had believed in his potential. And in the end, that person had defeated the most powerful geniuses of the Fallen clan, even when all hope seemed to be against him. Quinn finally found hope. He found hope in Ryuk's victory, and his own self-hampering belief and resignation to fate were finally shattered apart. The emotions were incredibly intense, causing him to burst out in tears. You're breaking my spine, Quinn. I'm just 1 foot away from falling to the ground. Ryuk whispered as Quinn finally remembered Ryuk had just had the fight of his life. He jumped off him, helping him up with his shoulder. Before more words could be spoken, the various elders appeared in the sky, along with the half-fallen one as they gently landed before the top 10 ultimate geniuses who had emerged. All of the geniuses bowed on one knee before the half-fallen one, but before their knees could touch down, an invisible force straightened them back up as they all looked at the half-fallen one who gazed deeply into the eyes of each of them before she smiled. Every one of you has worked very hard to claim a spot. All that you have wished for in life, for wanting to join the Ascension Academy. The Fallen clan will make sure to see you through your journeys, right from this point in life. And for all of those who are still standing in this arena, while it is unfortunate that you haven't been able to gain a spot, your efforts and training wouldn't be for naught, nor would your time of 5 months here be wasted. You all will be handsomely rewarded, the half-fallen one said, as the geniuses all bowed once more in appreciation. Finally, the fallen one's eyes turned to Ryuk himself. You have completed your mission here, Ryuk. You'll be returning with me, now, the half-fallen one said, and Ryuk could only give a nod to Quinn, who nodded back with an understanding smile before he moved to her side. In an instant, a bubble of golden energy encapsulated Ryuk's figure, and he found himself being weaved up into the sky of the arena before slowly disappearing. The last gazes he saw were that of Quinn fervently waving at him while tears spilled down his right eye. This won't be our last meeting, Ryuk. I promise. Quinn's voice could barely be heard as Ryuk disappeared farther and farther. By the time he completely disappeared from the Colosseum's air-space gaze, Ryuk's strength finally left his body, and he became unconscious, slumping into the bubble. The last thing he remembered was summoning Isha back to his pet world before the entire world completely darkened. You're finally awake, host. The golden notification panel was what Ryuk first sighted as he slowly raised himself up to his butt. He looked around the room, a small groan coming from his lips. It was like a second heartbeat had been placed in his head, bubbling up and down. But it was no heartbeat, only a colossal headache that threatened to rip apart his brain, although it quickly faded away. You're finally awake. The voice resounded as Ryuk raised his gaze, finding a figure rocking a fluffy-looking seat with a device in her hands. She had a cute smile, dressed in small clothes that revealed some part of her abdomen and baggy blue jeans. Ryuk's eyes couldn't help but widen brilliantly as he blinked twice, just to confirm things. Morgane? He asked in shock, unconsciously backing off a bit as he looked around the room and found that they were the only ones in it. Someone seems so surprised to see me, Morgane said as Ryuk hummed for a while before he turned to the side. The room was a small bedroom, and at the side one could see a window wall where the entire outside world could be seen. Right now, Ryuk could see various buildings that spread into the distance as far as the eyes could see, the twilight in the sky illuminating their figures and basking them in an ethereal glow. Where am I? Ryuk asked seriously this time as he got off the bedsheet, But the instant his legs touched the ground, he jerked back as he felt it intensely cold. The motion didn't escape Morgaine, whose eyebrows furrowed at it, but she still proceeded to respond. After the match, you were brought back to the half-fallen one's castle. I'm her daughter, so you can as well say my mom brought you back home. You're in my house now, and my mom is currently attending a meeting. She wouldn't be back home in at least 2 days from now, Morgaine explained as Ryuk nodded. But there was still something tugging at his mind. How long have I been asleep? He asked, and Morgaine counted her figure. Well, I arrived back home 2 days ago, and it has been 5 days, 7 days since the final. So that is up to an entire week that you have been unconscious. A week of unconsciousness, Ryuk mused before completing the thought. It seems like the battle really took its toll on me, but I'm still alive, Ryuk stated to himself, unconsciously heaving a sigh of relief. It really was good to breathe the air again. And finally, I have completed the test. Finally. All the training, all the sweat, and all the bloodshed. I finally have a spot. I've done it, old Jack. I've made sure your card never went to waste. And don't worry, uncle. I'll be getting them all soon. Hello? Ha! A gasp escaped Ryuk's lips as he looked in front of him, finding a hand waving at his face. You zoned out, Morgaine asked as she slowly took back her fingers, and Ryuk held his head. For a few seconds, he had completely forgotten about the outside world and that Morgaine was still in the room. Somehow, Ryuk felt a need to rise to his feet, and once more, his legs moved to touch the marble floor, only to jerk back again as a bit of shock zapped into his body. Your body's temperature has been incredibly high these past few days. You only started getting better 2 days ago, coincidentally with my arrival, Morgaine said as Ryuk turned to her while raising his eyebrow. What do you mean? Hee. Nothing, Morgaine said with a chuckle as she rose to her feet and walked out of the room while muttering. Mom recommended a tea for you on your awakening. A second. I'll go get it, she said, soon disappearing from view, and Ryuk unconsciously heaved. In the next instant, his legs moved out, touching the ground, and even though he felt the shock, Ryuk gritted his teeth as he allowed his legs to remain pressed before eventually the coldness faded away. With his body having adapted, Ryuk placed his second foot on the ground and allowed the coldness to once again fade before he rose to his waist. His bones crackled within his body from days of disuse, and Ryuk stretched a couple of times before he was finally able to get onto his feet. Finally, he mused as the door to the room opened up, and Morgaine came in, a tray with 2 cups in her hands. She settled the tray on the table, taking 1 cup for herself before passing the other to the standing Ryuk. Here, she said, as Ryuk looked at the cup of coffee. His gaze furrowed in distrust. I'm fine, he said, refusing it. Ryuk's refusal was for a few reasons. The most important was that he didn't trust Morgaine at all. The second reason was that he didn't trust even the half-fallen one herself, hence no reason to trust Morgaine either. And now she was passing him a cup of coffee. Who knew what had been put inside? Just for the record, I've been feeding you for the past 2 days now. Hee, Morgaine said, not at all offended, and Ryuk couldn't help but ask, is that right, system? Yes, host. She really has been doing so. After the departure of the half-fallen one herself, the job of feeding was passed to her. And host need not worry about the coffee. The system sensed no trace of harmful substances within it. And just so you know, I'm stronger than you even at your full power. If I wanted to kill you, I had 48 hours while you were unconscious. I wouldn't even break a sweat. So why would I choose to poison you now that you're awake when I could have done it while you were asleep? Morgaine asked. Her words were callous, but when said with such a cute face, it was hard for one to get mad. Her hands holding the cup were still stretched toward Ryuk, who couldn't help but rethink hundreds of scenarios and reasons in his head. But finally, he chose the one he agreed with the least. Thank you. He took the cup, raising it to his lips, and watched as Morgaine took a sip of her own cup. Ryuk couldn't help but ask again. How sure are you that this is truly safe? 100% sure, host. The coffee is an energy-replenishing serum, just like a rejuvenating bath but for the internal organs instead. The system explained, and satisfied with the explanation, Ryuk took a tiny sip. After a bit of taste and under Morgane's dull gaze, Ryuk finally took a big gulp, drinking the coffee to half the cup before placing it down. A small feeling of coldness couldn't help but appear through Ryuk's chest, giving a bit of balance to his otherworldly hot body. "You really are a weird one," Morgane mused as Ryuk turned his attention to her. "How so? Just what kind of dickhead refuses the honest advances of a pretty girl?" Morgane asked, flicking her hair to the side coquettishly as Ryuk stared for a while before a question escaped his lips. "Does being pretty mean incapable of harming others? Huh. If not, then being pretty or not doesn't really count for anything at all," Ryuk replied, his tone straightforward and direct with logic that left Morgane speechless. She could only stare at the boy, who turned to the large glass wall, looking at the sprawling city before him and taking another sip of his coffee. "And now I don't know whether to be happy or mad. I said I was pretty and he didn't argue that. If anything, he acknowledged it. Yet somehow, he also showed how much trust he has in that, which is essentially zero. I feel like smiling coquettishly right now, yet also giving him a solid knock on the head," she thought, but soon noticed Ryuk's eyes, though looking at the sprawling city, seemed lost once more. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, and Ryuk nodded before stating what worried his mind. "I'm just curious, though. Why did the half-fallen one bring me to her home? I had thought we would all be heading to the academy straight after the test," he stated as Morgane shook her head. "Yes, everyone will eventually be going together. But the Ascension Academy isn't currently open for newcomers. It would take at least a week from now before they do so. Mom probably knew there was nowhere you could go after the Arzion Hall closed, and since the academy wasn't open yet, where else could she bring you if not home?" Morgane nodded, and finally, Ryuk could heave a sigh of relief. Now it all made sense why he was in the Half-Fallen's home. Somehow that brought him so much peace and calm, and made the air around him feel less alien. Grrrr. Suddenly, a weird sound was made in the room, as both gazes turned to Ryuk's grumbling stomach. "That is, Ryuk called out as a pink hue appeared on his cheeks, leaving him at a loss for words. Talk about a bad time for his stomach to protest. "You're hungry. Makes sense since all you've been taking were endless healing serums. Come down. It's just the perfect time for dinner," Morgane said as she moved out of the room. After much consideration, Ryuk followed behind her. Exiting the room, what unfurled before them was a very long hallway with various images hung on the sides of the walls. Most of the images depicted Fallens in various poses, many of which Ryuk couldn't identify, but some were recognizable. Among those, there were dramatized portraits of the Half-Fallen One herself. It felt like a picture gallery, with gentle white light emanating from the crystals embedded in the ceiling, illuminating the area. The walk was incredibly quiet as they soon arrived at the end of the hall. Morgane opened a door, revealing a large, white room. They stood at the top of a balcony, gazing down at the sprawling space below. Guards with spears stood at the far end of the room, while maids dressed in pristine uniforms moved about, each attending to their duties. "This way," Morgane whispered, her voice low as if to avoid alerting the guards. She took a door to the side and entered. Ryuk followed after her. It wasn't long before they arrived at a sprawling table with various plates, all covered, along with fruits in small trays at the sides. Forks, spoons, and neatly folded napkins were set up, and surprisingly, the dining area had just 2 seats. Ryuk's eyes gleamed as he looked at both seats, but the gleam disappeared just quickly. "Welcome to my own personal and special dining room. Only 2 people know about this place out of the hundreds that visit this house every day, and you are the 3rd. You should feel honored," Morgane said, adopting an authoritative tone that Ryuk found strikingly similar to that of the Half-Fallen One, except thicker and more playful. She took her seat, and Ryuk sat opposite her. Morgane grabbed her knife and fork, uncovering the dishes one by one, a bright light of anticipation flashing in her eyes. There were vegetables, rice, meats, and many other assorted dishes Ryuk couldn't recognize. "Feel free to dive in," Morgaine said as she quickly began stuffing food into her mouth. Contrary to her, Ryuk sat gently, picking up his fork and knife slowly, seemingly eating with precision. This scene made Morgaine furrow her brows, a memory entering her mind. It was the memory of the first time she met Ryuk, stuffing food into his mouth like a beast. Yet now the roles seemed reversed. She was the one eating voraciously, while Ryuk watched her with a funny look, silently insinuating exactly what she was thinking. "Are you stylishly calling me a barbarian? I am a fallen princess, for fallen's sake," she called out as Ryuk grinned. "I didn't even say anything, my lady," he said with a chuckle, and Morgaine fumed, slowing her eating pace to match his. "I have a question, though," Ryuk stated, and Morgaine nodded. "Go on. If this is the half-fallen one's abode, then it must be a castle. I thought castles only have a single big dining room. Why do you have your own special small dining room? Do you not get along with the half-fallen one very well?" Ryuk asked, and Morgaine's motion paused as her brows furrowed. "How do you know that?" "Not much really. It's just I assumed if I were the daughter of the half-fallen one, then I would have probably announced it to the whole genius arena in the Arjun Hall. The respect and favor they would grant me would make life 1,000 times easier. But you didn't, and you even asked me not to reveal that. Besides, I noticed you didn't really bow to the half-fallen one right before you began your fight or when you finished. Unlike everyone else, you simply walked off. And throughout the competition, you seemed to be trying to avoid her gaze. And now, your dining room is also extra special, away from the dining room that belongs to the rest of the house. I doubt the half-fallen one uses this dining room. And even though the chairs are two, the one you're sitting on matches the color of the table, while the one I'm sitting on does not. It more or less looks like some regular chair that was brought in newly for a special occasion. Almost like you expected me to eventually be hungry and prepared a seat for me. All of this seems to point to the fact that you're somehow trying to alienate yourself from the half-fallen one in all possible ways," Ryuk stated, and Morgaine's jaw almost dropped to the ground. He observed all of that while under the pressure of fighting Ignitus, and just a few seconds after waking up and walking to the room? How did one come by such incredible observation skills? "You're right, but it's simple, really. I like my mom, but I hate the half-fallen one," Morgaine said, and Ryuk hummed, trying to make sense of that. Soon he nodded. "I understand," he mused. "Oh really? How so?" Morgaine asked curiously as Ryuk reviewed the information of mom in his head. Putting himself in Morgaine's shoes, the reason for her hatred became quickly clear to him.